Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brian Greer. You're watching Game Brigade, and today we're taking a look at Final Girl, the small box horror game that recently finished on Kickstarter. There is going to be a brand new campaign coming out this week, so I thought it'd be a perfect time for me to actually talk about this game, review it, and give you my thoughts so that you can make a wise backing decision regarding if you should pick this up in the next Kickstarter campaign later this week. So we're going to go through how the game plays, timestamps down below for your convenience, and then we'll go into my overall thoughts and feelings regarding Final Girl. Okay, so Final Girl, this is the setup. So just for context, I do have the playmat here. The playmat, I decided to set out in case anyone was kind of curious how they work together. But this game is fully able to be played with no playmats. In fact, all of the boards are actually built into the boxes, which is really kind of a unique aspect of the game. But I did purchase the playmat when I bought the first campaign, and I thought it would be interesting for people to kind of see how it works. There's still sections of it that I don't quite know what they're for, like the victim pool and this little thing down here. But for the most part, or like these stars, I don't know if they want you to put your stars here or something like that. But for the most part, the playmat is fairly helpful in setting up the game. Final Girl is a bigger game than I thought it would be, especially for a solo experience. Like, this is a very far reach for a solo game. So that is interesting. So your table space will be bigger, especially I guess with the playmat. It does make it more premium in terms of the size, but that is still the nature of how the game wants to be set up in general. So here we have a modular system. Final Girl is completely modular. In the core box, which is required to play, you're going to have everything you're going to need for the standard gameplay, but then from there, you're going to have to purchase one of these VHS-like games, which is going to have inside of it a villain and two girls that are the final girls. And these will also have the locations. What's really great about this game is that everything is modular. So you could take, if you have multiples of these expansions, you could take the girl from one game and a villain from another game, say Hans here, and combine them in a new location, say the Carnival of Blood. I really like that modular system that they have created here, and is probably one of the greatest strengths of the game. So here we have, this is just the standard basic, I would say, introduction game. We have Camp Happy Trails, and I've got Hans set up. At the top here we have the scenario that we're playing, which is skinny dipping. And I thought it was funny because I didn't realize they were named. So I just looked at it, I set the heroes up, or the characters up, and if you look at down here, they have names like the lake or the cliff, the dock. And I've got these two these two victims on the cliff, and you have this person swimming in the lake. And I'm like, oh, they're like skinny dipping. And it's actually the name of the scenario, which I thought was kind of interesting. We've got two people up here at Makeout Point. Two people are hanging out at the fire pit. Someone's in the cabins. These people are probably walking around trying to get back from where they're at. And the killer has shown up from the road, probably overlooking the skinny dippers is how I was kind of thinking about it, and ready to begin his massacre. And our girl is hanging out in the docks, probably watching her friends swim. I love the thematic nature of this game. Just right there in my head, I've already set the movie picture up, and I'm ready to experience the game. At the top, right next to that scenario, we have all the equipment that's available in the game, and they are going to be labeled cabins, dock, or utility shed, which are locations in the game that you can only loot those things from. Over here to the left, we have the villain board, which is going to have the villain's cards, his total health, as well as a tracker here to say how much movement or damage he will do if he were to attack me and or move towards someone. On the other side of the board here, we have the terror deck. This is going to be the action deck of what the villain's going to do. And then when it runs out, he will turn into like the finale of the movie, which is very interesting because it does definitely feel like a finale. And it's generally close to when everything is kind of wrapped up. And the villain will turn into this like almost superhero where their movement is like 6 spots. And it's almost reminds me of when you're watching a horror movie and you're like, how is Jason able to get all the way from there over to there? It's because he's in the finale mode, just like how this game is explaining. So you got your terror deck. This is going to go ahead and be his action. And then events are triggered here, which can trigger different things that are happening in the game. For example, right now we have Stubborn Kids, which says 1 less victim will follow me when I'm trying to lead them to safety. Normally we can carry 2 victims, and this time they're going to be stubborn. The one that I had just previously recording this one, we had victims will cause me health if I save more than 1 at a time. So if I try to save 2, they're going to be causing me damage because they're gripping on my arms so tightly. And then down here's the actual player board. This is where a majority of the game will be spent. We have here the horror track. This starts off based off the horror meter here at the top of the the villain meter. So currently it's at 4, and this will dictate how many dice we roll here from these horror rolls. The less scared our hero becomes, the more confident they become and more dice they roll. Or alternatively, the scarier they are, the less dice we roll. This is definitely a fail backwards, in the sense that the game gets more difficult the harder the worse you're doing, the game is going to get worse and worse and worse. So that is something to take note of, and it's also a very punishing game. So it can swing on a moment. Down here we have the tableau of available cards of our purchasing payout power, and then we have a default deck. Default deck, you'll notice, has a 0 basically on the time chart. These are how you know that they are part of your starting hand. So that is the actual setup, and down here we have our hero. The heroes are double-sided. Our standard side is the ones that have these little meeple signs, and then once you have finished saving up how many hero victims they need, you will then convert her to her final form, which is generally the same time the finale is going to trigger, and both the final girl and the villain are going to be duking it out to see who will be the victor. So that's the basic setups of the game. There's some more things like tokens and our dice and whatnot. I think, though, I guess the final thing I didn't talk about was the time track. Time track is super important because it is how you're going to be spending your money come in the end of each round. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to have an action phase where you're going to be playing these cards from your hand. And I guess we could just kind of lead into that so it works well. So let's talk about walking. Let's say we want to do an average thing like walk. First, we have to look at our dice, how many dice we roll. Currently, we're rolling 2 dice. So we'd select those and we roll them. And then from that, we look at our results. Here we have the 4s. The 4s have 2 cards on it, which means I can discard 2 cards from my hand to gain a success. To look at what a success means, we look down here, and if we had 2 successes, we can move up to 2 spaces and then lose a time. A single success, which means we move up to 1 space and lose the time. If we have no successes, which is currently we have no successes, we can move up to 1 space, lose a health, and lose 2 time, or just lose 2 time. So this is the part where you have to make a decision as a player of what is best for you to try to get, be successful. I could discard most of my hand, 4 cards, and get 2 successes, and that would just leave me with a single card remaining. Or I could discard 2 cards, take 1 space, doesn't as effective, but at least I'm not taking damage. Or we could take damage and lose more time. Let's talk about the time aspect, though, because that will be an important factor. Right here on this chart, we have our time meter. It goes all the way up to 12, ends at 0. When you do any type of actions in this game, it does cost time. So if we were to do the one to move 1 space, it would trigger down to 5. When we are done completing actions, let's say we are done playing cards from our hands, the remaining amount of time is what we will then use to spend money in our tableau. This is important because these are the cards that are really impactful. Search allows us to search for items. Sprinting obviously lets us sprint. Improvise lets us have more successes on our rolls. For example, these would have been automatic successes if we had that. Distractions allows us to reduce the timer and also give us more time because you're distracting the villain. And then down here is more ways of how we're going to actually deal damage to the villain. We have Retaliate, we have Furious Strike, we've got Critical Blow, as well as ways to plan and rest. So these are the cards you're going to be spending from. So the player is going to have to make a key decision of how many cards do they want to play from their hand versus how much do they want to spend here from the tableau. So let's say we just want to walk. We're going to do pick up this person, and now we're going to walk back to the dock. Let's say we just got 2 successes for shits and giggles. And then this card will come down here to our plate. It's very important you separate your plate from your hand, because we'll talk about that in a second. Then we go to the spending phase. So now we've got 5 time to spend. I can say take the search because I'm currently on the dock. That costs 2, so it'll take us down to 3. And then I'm going to buy sprint, because you never know. That costs me 2. Down to 1, and then I'll buy a close call, down to 0. Your maximum hand size can be 10. So we look right here. We have 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 cards, and we're good. This card that we spent down here, the walk, though, this is now going to go over here to 0 action cards. This happens at the end of the purchase phase. So now this card will be available for us to gather the next turn. So if I had spent or discarded a bunch of these cards, they would be down here, and I'd only have now, say, the cards that I have available. Plus, they would have taken me more time, so I wouldn't have been able to buy all these cards. So there is that idea that you're going to have to play into managing your time and your resources and what works best. After I have done my purchase phase, and then we'll go to the villain, where the villain will do their standard ability, which his is listed right here. His is just attack someone in the space. If there's someone in his space, either me or a victim, he will attack them. No one there, and then we would just go to the draw phase, draw his action, and you resolve it and read it, which actually says draw the top card of any item deck, which is pretty sweet, which is really sweet. So I would just draw the knife and add that to my hands because it's helpful, and boom, there we go. Then it goes back to me. We've got our whole new set of 8 cards in our hand. The time resets back to 6, and we begin again. In this process, this core gameplay loop of managing your time, playing cards, purchasing from the tableau is pretty much what you're going to be doing. It's a hand management game at its core, utilizing your actions, and then the dice are the key, I guess, game component you're playing against, because the way it rolls and the successes you earn from here are going to be the major determination of your ability to complete the game. Now, there are ways to modify the dice. You've got close call, lets you to re-roll some dice. There are items that can modify dice. You also have cards like improvise, which can allow multiple successes if you do well there. And then we have planning, which lets you roll more dice. You also can, like I said, reduce the time to add more dice to your roll, which is super important because the more dice you're rolling, the more chances of a success you're able to reach. In fact, the last game I played, which was on Campaign Betrayals, my girlfriend joined me for this one, and so we were able, and she gives me an extra dice as long as she's with me, and so I was able to bring my girlfriend with me through the entire experience, rolling 4 dice because I kept it down into the green down here. It was a great experience. I loved it. It was super fun. Unfortunately, we didn't win that one either, so haven't actually won a game of Final Girl as it goes. So that's the basic gameplay, how it works. The game will keep going. Once this deck is expired, once you played all those cards, the villain will convert to his final form. So here we've got Butcher Bloodlust, which means he will be ticking this meter up every turn. He will then be targeting the closest victim and or final girl. He moves 2 boots, and then he will attack. So 2 boots means he moves and then moves again. And this meter, depending on how high it is, tells you how many movements. So right here, he would move 2. So for example, he would go 1, 2, and then he could go 1, 2, whatever. He can basically move across the entire map. And this Butcher Bloodlust is going to be ticking this up automatically until it gets to the very top. Basically, he becomes a madman. There's also a second time on this chart which says Dark Power. If this meter reaches the Dark Power, this flips. Or if you do what I have done and manage the Dark Power, it flips automatically once this deck is ended because the final form is completed. As you go in through the game, you're going to try to rescue these victims. Every time you rescue a victim, you take their meeple and you can cover up something over here, which will generate a specific reward. For example, this one generates me 2 times, so I can save myself some time. This one will reduce the horror track. One moves me some space, etc. And every hero is different. So that is part of the asymmetrical experience of the game. So that is, in a nutshell, Camp Happy Trails, or not Camp Happy Trails, Final Girl. Let's go ahead and talk about my thoughts about this game and whether you should be considering this for your collection. Okay, so right off the bat, I want to talk about my first impressions for Final Girl. First, with setup. The game took longer than I would expect for a solo experience for setup, and I think that is something to notice or to at least comment on. Not that the point that it was detrimental to my experience, but there was definitely a lot of fiddly bits and pieces that you have to make sure you have in the right order, making sure your decks are okay. Because of the asymmetrical, you have to pull out the location, make sure you've got the location deck, get your villain out, get the villain deck, shuffle those together, take out a certain amount, put the rest to the side. You're going to have to break those again, break them up at the end, make sure they're in their own separate decks. Make sure your events are situated. There's a lot of fiddly bits, especially with these victims in the box. They kind of rattle around. This does have a custom insert inside, but they don't, especially if you're trying to store them upright like I do. If you stored them like this, probably no problem. But a VHS, at least in my household, we always had VHSs vertical, and that's how I wanted to store them in my house. And so that means these victims in here are always rattling around and all over the place. The hearts up here have to be placed, and you have a lot of random tokens. So there are a lot of fiddly bits. I don't think it ruins the game, but I do want to make sure people are aware that the setup time is a little longer than an average solo game experience that I've played. The key aspect to Final Girl that I think is the selling point, one, the theme, but two is the modularity experience. There are currently, I believe, 4 or 5 individual boxes. I think there's 5 for heroes and villains and locations. That is an immense amount of different types of play that you can enjoy. You can modular with different heroes, villains, and locations, and I think it's incredible. I love the way it plays, and in fact, I haven't seen anyone talk about this, but inside the core box is the lore guide. And the lore guide actually has different types of setups. So you have here Hans the Butcher, and if you open it up, it'll tell you a little story, and then Night of the Pig. And it'll tell you, okay, for this one, you're going to be playing Lori, the final girl. The setup is going to be treasure hunt. Do all these things. Make sure this is set up this way. And you're going to basically relive the story from the game. And I thought originally, okay, that's cool. You get to play Hans on Camp Happy Trails. But no, they go deeper from that. They have it for the haunted house. They have it for the vacation home. They have it for the Nightmare on Elm Street location, the theme park. So you can play Hans on multiple different stories and experience his story through each location, which I think is really, really cool. And I really like that aspect of the lore guide. So I haven't seen many people talk about that. And so I thought it'd be important to bring it out because I thought it was really fun. In fact, I'll probably be doing most of the lore stories first before I go into breaking off into different types of asymmetrical experiences. Another thing they included in the Kickstarter was this Necromonic, I don't know how to say it. Basically, this includes 2 different dice, and you can roll it, and it'll basically be telling you how you're going to, it basically tells you how you're going to play. This is kind of funny because it hit random, but let's say it hit like this. So if you're like, I don't know what I want to play today, well, this will tell you you're going to play Hans and you're going to play it on the Maple Street. And then you just go ahead and build the game from there, which I think is super cool. So this has all the current story characters in the game as well as their current locations, and whatever it rolls you play. So I think that's interesting. It might be a little kitschy and cute, but I think it's a fun little thing to have. So the modular experience, this is kind of going back to that. I think it's a really incredible experience. But we're coming up to the second Kickstarter launch for Final Girl, so Final Girl 2, which is going to include a bunch more modulars experiences. The question will be for you, how many do you feel like you're going to need? Because I personally feel like the game is pretty set at 5. I don't necessarily know how much more I'm going to want. So the biggest question would be is look at the Final Girls, look at the scenarios they're bringing, and see which ones might be a better fit for you. Maybe there's certain types of movies that you've enjoyed, Jason or Friday the 13th or Alien, because I know they're bringing in, it looks like a Ripley Alien scenario in Final Girl 2. So maybe you pick up, specific chapters that might fit your theme of what you enjoy, because it's going to get kind of big with all the experience. If you are a solo gamer, though, I think it could be totally fine. There's a lot to be had here, especially if you're a horror fan. So take note of that. I want to talk about the nature of the gameplay experience. My impressions of the actual gameplay I felt was extremely punishing. I talked about this a little earlier about the pain of if you're doing poorly, it's going to scale forward and get harder and harder and harder, but not entirely just in that. I've had experiences where I've been playing this game, feel like I am on top of the world. There's no way I'm going to lose this game, but then the villain literally kills me in a single turn because of the nature of the dice not rolling how I need them to roll when I play these guard or retaliate cards, and he's able to deal immense amounts of damage to me. For example, if he is this all the way to the top, he deals 5 damage per attack. I had one of his things that said he attacks me twice, and then the buff was if he were to attack, he attacks again. I interpreted that means he would attack me 3 times. That's 15 damage coming your way, and if you only have starting health of 5, that's a lot of damage you're going to have to figure out how to mitigate. And if you're not rolling well on these guards or retaliates, there's not much you can do. So you can do everything perfect. You can play the game very, very well, and a single roll, just like that, might end the game. So that was something that might be kind of hard for some people to accept or be appreciative. I didn't mind it because it kind of played well into the theme of what this game is. If you kind of look at it like these are super villains that are just kind of always have been like not human in terms of the way they can react and amount of damage they can do or whatever. And our girl is obviously just a standard girl, and she might not make it. It seemed fair to me in that manner, but it was punishing. I would say it didn't feel bad. If I was going to give you a better term, it didn't feel bad to experience the loss, but it was a little frustrating at times when you're like, man, it's just one roll. An entire 40-minute experience could be derailed because I rolled just what I rolled right there poorly. So that is something to be aware of. So let's talk about my final thoughts regarding Final Girl. Overall, Final Girl is an incredible experience for me as a movie buff, for one. I enjoy these kind of classic movie tropes being played out here. One of my favorite YouTube channels covers these kind of movies, Fresh Meat. I've talked about it before on my channel. If you haven't seen Fresh Meat, incredible YouTube channel, talks about these kind of movies and breaks them down. And so being able to play a game that's kind of in that realm that really does feel very thematic in every aspect of the game. Every part of this really oozes the experience that you are part of this world. I really do enjoy it. So I'm going to give this a recommended seal, but there's a caveat there. I only think if you're really into what solo games are okay with the dice mitigation that is involved in this game, as well as the horror movie. If you're someone who enjoys those kind of movie, not even just horror movies, but just movie tropes, this would probably be good for you. I can see this game not nailing it for everyone. So while my recommendation tab is because I really like this game and I'd recommend it, I think everyone should at least play it once. It might not be for you. So hopefully this helped you clarify a little better going forward with the Kickstarter. So this is Brian from Game Brigade. If this video helped you, please leave a comment down below, as well as give me a thumbs up. Our goal is currently always to hit 100 thumbs up on every video. And if you look down in the information tab below, we're currently trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. If you're not subscribed to the video or the channel and you want to help us support, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It would greatly be appreciated. Otherwise, thank you everyone for watching the show. This is Brian from Game Brigade. I will talk to you very soon.